football analyst who joins us. All right, Sam, this should be, you would hope that this is one where Baylor kind of tucks the sheets underneath, makes the bed, walks away. A lot of people get to play. Is that what you think might happen?
Thanks for having me on. And yes, that's definitely what I'm thinking is going to be the case this weekend. I've had to preview a lot of teams in the years that have been covering Baylor. And this is one that they're just not in a good place. They've lost 17, 18, 19 straight at the FCS level. They've got 2 freshman quarterbacks. Their offensive tackles are really lightweight. And statistically, they really haven't been all that strong. It's something where they're kind of built from the outside in, because in the secondary and in terms of edge rushers and in terms of receivers and running backs, they've got some guys that can really play. I mean, Jonathan Giles, who was at Texas Tech and LSU, and I think has like over 1,700 receiving yards in his career, almost all of that at the Power 5 level. He's on that team. You've got Michael Badeo, who is a preseason all-SWAC kind of player at the defensive end, and he was an SMU transfer who easily could have played for the Ponies. You've got some talented guys there, but just don't have the full team. It doesn't seem like what they're trying to do is very efficient in the way they're going about it. And I don't know if they've necessarily got buy-in from all their guys. So if Baylor struggles with this team, I'll be very surprised.
Sam, how does Baylor get the deep passing game going? Is this just more on Gary Bohannon slowing it down a little bit?
Yeah, I think you've got to let him throw it a little bit more than you did last week. And part of that, they're just not opening up the playbook. They don't want to give people tendencies to key on, because if you're going to do a deep RPO, for instance, you don't want your opponent to have on film, well, we know they're going to run this RPO and that they're going to break on a post route at this many yards. You don't want to give them that. So they're going to do a lot to keep that off of film. But for the most part, you're really going to get a lot of what you got last game in terms of play calling. They're not going to bust open the playbook for this one too much. They're going to work on getting guys solid reps on blocking, wide zone, and in protection. They're going to get some decent reps on Gary going through his reads on some of the basic stuff. But I don't see them doing anything too exotic. They don't need to, and it serves them tactically to keep that off of film.
Sam, what was the most concerning thing that you saw last week?
Drive extending penalties.
Okay.
They gave up 20 yards to Texas State and 2 penalties. 2 penalties. That's the reason that those drives happened. It almost doubled Texas State's yards per drive. Baylor still held them to a pretty respectable 21 yards per drive, but it would have been just an absolutely dominant 12 yards per drive if they get those 2 stops. So if you don't rough the passer and if you don't rough the punter, they have 10 points, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's what teams that sometimes...
Well, that's what makes the game look way worse than it did. It's like they dominated, but they never... They dominated, yeah.
You kept putting. You said this in one of your audio things on Saturday night or whatever it was. They didn't pull the kill shot. No. You know, the killer instinct or whatever. And Paul, on your post game, they just never could just step on their neck and break it.
Yeah,
that's kind of violent.
That's pretty
football
pretty extreme, but
yeah. But Sam, we just kind of kept waiting for that. Was that like, okay, now the Lions are the Bears are gonna eat?
Well, at the same time, the Bears never really were stonewalled all night. I mean, the first couple drives that ended up without points, Baylor moved it like 30, 40 yards on each of them. And then you had a fumble, and then you had a missed field goal. And then you've also had the drive where Fleeks actually caught a touchdown, but for some reason that was not called a touchdown and not reviewed. So if you just clean up your act on defense in terms of drive extending penalties, and if they call the Fleeks touchdown correctly, Baylor's at 40 yards per drive and Texas State is at 12. And you're talking somewhere in the ballpark of a 36-10 score. This is one of those games where the other team almost pulled a Bill Snyder on you, where they just do the little things to keep themselves in there, and they get these little breaks that a lot of the casual fan will miss, but just keep the game close. Now, to be fair, Texas State did not protect the ball very well, but at the same time, a lot of that was on Baylor. That pick six, that was a film study pick six, because that was an RPO. Quarterback had a simple read, and the safety knew exactly where he was going with it. He saw it the whole way and took it to the house.
All right, Sam, one more thing, and we appreciate your time and appreciate you moving around your time with all the juggling we're doing with the incoming writers, analysts, whatever. The realignment. I mean, you've kind of discussed this a little bit, but here we are. It's the 4 new teams introduced today. It's going to be July 1st, 2023 for Brigham Young, and probably the other 3 at some point around that same time based on exit timing, all that stuff, money, exit fees. Your thoughts about what all this means?
Well, I thought this was the likely outcome once Texas and Oklahoma left, just because the payouts in all these conferences are so very high. It takes a Texas or an Oklahoma or a USC or an Ohio State or a Clemson or a Miami or a Florida State to justify expansion. It's just so high. And I would have said the same thing about many of the mid-tier teams in the other Power Fives coming to the Big 12. It's just really difficult. There's a reason they didn't expand back in 2016. But since Texas and Oklahoma are gone, the payout's a little lower and expansion makes sense. And I think BYU certainly proved itself. And even though I had David Smoak, particularly late at night. And beyond that, I think UCF built a brand for itself. And I think that's only going to grow. You're talking about people who actually were on campus when that stadium was actually built on campus, and they actually started playing people that weren't in the MAC. Those people are in their 30s and 40s now. Their donor base has yet to grow up completely. And you look at that, and then they can be a kind of sort of unofficial pro team in Orlando. You're going to have a lot of sponsorships. And in the age of name, image, and likeness, that's going to be pretty big for them. Cincinnati's been proven since their time in the Big East, and they've been consistently solid in both major sports. They add a new market. They add a new recruiting ground. And then Houston brings back an old Southwest Conference rivalry. Houston was one I went back and forth thinking, oh, they're certainly going to include him. Oh, there's no way they're going to include him. And without being in the room, you just don't know who was pushing for whom or if there was any pushing needed. I easily could have seen them go with Memphis there if for some reason there was some pushback on Houston, but I think Houston is probably the better pick. I think they got more intent to spend big, to win big, and I think they get you back into Southeast Texas where the Aggies and Longhorns have a lot of interest, and they'll give your conference a little bit more exposure there that you might be at risk of losing.
Sam, thank you very much. By the way, Sam has already told me he's already ready for exit fees. He's got a big news coming. When is the am I allowed to say this, Sam, on the air? Maybe not.
Sure.
No, he's about to have birth. Sam's about to have a baby.
Sam's not doing it. Sam's watching.
Well, I mean, yeah, but Sam, is this like Halloween?
We got our second one on the way.
Well, wait a minute. It's a 9-month thing on the way. Is that like in the next month? Is that what because you told me there might be a holdout coming.
There month or so.
Yeah.
God, you're so high maintenance. My God. Thank you, buddy. Sam, he's the best at breaking it down. I'm telling you, there's another thing pinned at the top of premium section of Sam when he breaks down the game. And that also breaks down the upcoming opponent, as does Football Bob as well. Now, let's do this because I know we're going to drop in on Cincinnati. So